the people, the people who are going to make that happen for you. We have Manas Gupta. He's the CEO and co-founder of GobbleQ. Before this, Manas was building core systems at Blinkit. So he's seen the industry from inside out. Today, GobbleQ is working with 600 plus brands on QComm intelligence. And the frameworks that you're going to be hearing today come straight from that data. Then we have Raghav Chawar. He's the founder of Your Growth Labs. They work like an extended QComm team with brands managing their entire P&L. Raghav previously worked at Instamart. They are now scaling revenue for brands like Mapro, Bindujira, Gladful, managing over 160 crores in annual revenue across categories. He knows exactly what it takes to execute this on the ground. We'll be keeping the Q&A at the end, so feel free to drop in your questions in the chat box. Before we dive in, we wanted to understand where exactly you are in your QComm journey. So what we'll do is we'll do a quick live poll. You'll see one pop up on your screen. We'll go ahead, collect the responses, and yeah, we can just start the poll. Let's see. Okay. We have 58, 59 responses till now. Let's give it 30 more seconds. Okay, so 29%, 19 out of 6, we have 65 responses, 19 out of 65, about 29% replied, haven't launched yet, they're still evaluating. 23% said live, but growth is inconsistent. 42% have mentioned that they're scaling and looking to optimize. And 66% are saying that I advise or invest in brands in this space. So Manas, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Saryu, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, really thankful for taking the time out on a busy Tuesday afternoon. I genuinely appreciate the fact that you're here. So we would like to make this session as relevant for you as possible. It's also great to see that there is a very healthy and balanced mix of people across these different scales, set of life cycles. So yeah, I mean, what we'll try to do is make this session as relevant to each one of you as possible. But let's start with the QCOM moment. I know it's kind of preaching to the converted right now, but let's put some numbers in perspective, which helps us recognize not just how much QCOM has evolved over the last 3 years, but also the scale which it is set to achieve over the next 5, because that kind of helps us also contextualize the size of the price that we're going after over here. So if we look at the QCOM overall market size, it started out back in 2022, where it's just in our nascent days. I mean, as part of Grofers, which had been recently rebranded Blinkit, trying to build and scale some of these systems. And it was barely like a $300 million business, while today it is a $7 billion plus business. And while we think that this is phenomenal growth that has been achieved, I think the best is yet to come, because fundamentally what QCOM is doing is it is reshaping how shoppers think about getting their products. It is reshaping that behavior. And what it is doing is it is reshaping the entire distribution, the entire value chain, which is very important for brands to kind of recognize and get to terms with as they scale their businesses. It's said to grow to about $35 billion. But more interestingly, it's also the growth rate that really matters. So the CAGR through 2030 for QCOM is almost more than double of what it is for an e-com. Modern trade is kind of stagnated in India right now because of all the constraints that exist. And just to kind of put this into perspective, I mean, Unilever, one of the most respected and storied brands in this space, the comment that came from the CEO was the fact that QCOM is expected to hit almost 10 to 15% of their India sales. And this clearly establishes the fact that this is not a place which can be ignored anymore. But what is exactly is happening through this growth, right? Why is this growth in unprecedented? And what is the leverage that it is creating for new age brands which are coming and listing on QCOM? Well, rather than just getting into theory, I mean, let's prove it through numbers. And I think one thing you will see throughout this presentation is that we based it more on the numbers and the successes that we have seen rather than just being a bunch of theoretical exercises. Because, I mean, very frankly, ज्ञान अभी हर जगह होता है. I think it is how that is reflecting in real numbers is what really matters. So let's look at that. If I take the last decade, 2011 to 2020, there were about 25 brands that crossed the 100 CR ARR mark. And I think that's kind of like that holy grail, which every brand as it starts out kind of guns for. But if I fast forward to the decade that we're living in today, and look at we're not like we're just barely halfway through it, right? We're 5.5 years in, and 100 brands plus and counting have already crossed the 100 CR mark. Now, I don't think this is just a coincidence or serendipity. It is because QCOM has actually democratized this distribution advantage. So, in the past, when a brand actually started out, they had to go in and crack the entrenched distribution network, but now it's becoming much more seamless for them. Because let's look at the depth and breadth of this distribution. There are 5,000 plus dark stores spanning across 200, almost 300 cities today, right? So, you get instant access to all that distribution without actually having to go to every nook and corner of the country to actually find this. What's also more interesting is while when it started out back in 2022, and this is something which I kind of heard firsthand at that point of time, ki, oh, this is just a metro only phenomena. Who needs groceries in 10 minutes and so on and so forth. It's not the case anymore. Because if you look at the tier two and tier three cities, the hinterlands, I mean, I come from a very small town of Jabalpur and we have Blinkit over there. And my mom actually uses Blinkit over there. We've got almost 66% of the new orders which are coming in from these cities. It's obviously a very important channel for D2Cs, which account for almost 30% of the sales over there. But also, more interestingly, it is a bottom of the funnel channel. So, a lot of times when customers come over here, they are very, very high intent customers. So, if you think of it from a marketing funnel perspective, the typical marketing funnel always goes into awareness, consideration, trial, repeat, loyalty, right? That's the typical marketing funnel. What QCOM is doing, it's very high intent users. So it's kind of taking away that entire consideration layer. So if as a brand you're driving awareness, you can immediately induce trials using QCOMs. And these are kind of some of those qualities which QCOM is bringing on the table, which is helping brands scale really fast. And I mean, there are so many QCOM first success stories, right? Let's try Go Zero, some of the very storied brands who've been able to achieve these success stories over here. So now, as you look to scale on Q-commerce, one thing which is also very important to recognize. Samarth, I think you've just raised your hand, but is it okay if we take all the questions towards the end? So, so yeah, I mean, coming back to this fact, right? What is also important to recognize is as you are scaling, right? If you're a young emergent brand on Q-commerce versus you're a large established brand on Q-commerce, gradually the metrics that you're optimizing for, the objective functions will start evolving. So as a young brand today, you will be chasing top line. You will look at a lot of your input metrics, which we'll talk about in the next slide. You will also kind of vie for platform attention because these are critical to kind of get you started. And probably category share is not the first thing that you're looking to optimize for. But as you become larger and larger, as you hit double digit category shares, you're probably saying that, okay, the platform is growing. Am I growing faster than the platform or am I not? Right? Which is where category share becomes very important. So it's not just about scaling anymore. It is about driving category share and what are the reasons that are driving it. And these problems keep evolving. Gradually, they get into more of revenue growth management. Maybe on day one, you're okay to take a burn, but as you scale up, contribution margin starts becoming very, very important. So we actually come in with this very strong recognition that both these aspects are critical for brands to solve. For the purpose of this particular webinar, we'll focus more on the first one. And then maybe at some later point of time, we can get into the second one as well. We would love to talk about it as well, because that's something which we very, very actively do with some of the very large and respected brands in India. So, how do you go about that, right? Are you optimizing for the right thing, or are you optimizing for the wrong thing? Well, a lot of times when I have had conversations with a lot of the founders, one of the critical things is that, oh, this is an expensive channel. I'm spending a lot on this channel, which is absolutely fair. But see, it comes with a cost because they're also giving you access to this democratized distribution network. Uh, what you need to think about is, rather than just worrying about only optimizing for the spends, are you optimizing for the entire system and the relationships that drive the system? Because again, we need to be very, very cognizant of the fact that this is not just a pure kind of system where you press a few buttons and things get done. There is a relationship element, right? There are humans sitting on the other side of the table as well. So how do you manage? Which I think Raghav will also talk more deeply about. But if you see, this entire relationship layer encompasses four very important uh, input metrics from your perspective. The first and foremost is your assortment, right? Then comes availability, and we'll talk about each of these in more detail as we go along. Then comes marketing spends, where you're so let's say in assortment you're working very closely with the category team. Then when it comes to availability, you're not just dealing with the category team, but also the inventory and supply chain team, right? Getting the right appointments, getting your stuff inside the warehouses. Then comes the marketing spends, where you're coordinating with the marketing team, and then promo, which is again category. So you're talking to a bunch of personas within these platforms, and you're trying to solve these bunch of problems, right? And while spends and promos show up in your contribution margin, they are actually not the gating criteria. The gating criteria actually starts from assortment and availability, and that needs to be solid, right? That is your foundation, which you need to get right before you move on to the next set of things. So again, before we dive into all those things, there is another poll that we have for all of you, which is a very simple question. I have limited time and money, right? Which is a reality which every emergent brand faces. What do I focus on first? Is it about finding the right demand pockets? How do I get listed and stay available? Am I spending on the right kind of ads? Or do I optimize just for reach or conversion? So let's take maybe 30, 45 seconds to maybe share your answers, and then we'll kind of move along. Saryu, yeah.
Yeah, we've launched the poll. Let's wait. Okay, we have 59 responses, 64. Let's wait for 15 seconds more. Okay.
Cool, perfect. So I think thank you so much, everyone, for answering. And this was a multiple answer question, so the percentage just might not make sense. But yeah, I mean, completely agree with what you're saying. And it's phenomenal to see that uh, even by a small margin. But I think the winner is identifying the demand in the right pockets, because it is the starting point of what works. Because a lot of the other things are built upon getting this right. So with that, uh, uh, sorry. So this is the results. So there
Yeah.
is demand pocket, which really matters. Listing and availability, of course, right? Once you identify the right demand pockets, creating some of these things makes sense. I think ads always a question that goes top of the mind, and reach and conversion. So yeah, with that, moving forward. So we talked about availability. And again, as I had mentioned at the start of the webinar, let's start with numbers and go deeper from there. So these are a lot of our learnings from the brands, the 600 plus brands that GobbleCube is already working with. In order to maintain the privacy and confidentiality of all the brands, we've not shared the names, but we have talked about some of the real success stories that a lot of these brands were able to create. What was the kind of assumption that they went in with? What was the insight which was counterintuitive to the assumption that they went with? And what's the kind of action that they did to achieve this success? So when it comes to assortment, one of the large BPC brands achieved 100% sales growth in less than 6 months. And the primary driver of that was the starting assumption of the brand that QComm is actually a top-up purchase channel. So we should have smaller packs over there. But as we did a deeper micro category analysis for them, through the price pack architecture module, we were able to identify there was a huge skew towards large packs. So the consumers in that category were actually stocking up or looking at QCOM as their regular stock up purchase rather than just top up purchases. So the brand actually launched some of these large packs, which became instant hit, driving this kind of results. But as you think about some of these things, it becomes a very integral part of how you're launching things, because you're not just looking across the price of pack architecture. You're looking at every city in its individuality. And these are all screenshots from some of the insights that GobbleCube enables you to do. So you look at the city level insights because every city can have a very different nuance to it. There's also a micro category that you should be looking at, and it can be across different dimensions. I mean, a micro category could be across ingredients, benefits, claims. But how do you identify which are the growing segments, which are the ones where the size of the prize is worth going after? And it becomes very important. But at this moment, it is not just about identifying these things, but actually putting them into action. So I would request Raghav to kind of talk about some of his own personal experiences working with so many brands over here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Manas. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. I do hope that all our learnings combined is helpful for all of you. I think, as Manas mentioned, once we figure out the assortment and once we identify the gaps in cities or SQs, one of the most important thing that becomes is that the system is not a very open system. Not anybody can go and list their products and start selling. You still have a layer, which is the category manager, whom you need to uh, go through to actually get sales on QCOM platforms. And I think most of the D2C brands or even large brands, when they want to list a new product or enable a new city, have to kind of go through their category manager, which at a lot of times becomes either a blocker or an enabler for the person or the brand that is. Last year, before I started Growth Labs, I was at Swiggy Instamart for about 6 months. And when I used to see all of these category managers of leading categories like ice cream, snacks, etc., I used to see them getting more than 100 calls a day, literally. And it was kind of impossible for them to answer to all of them. And in that case, if let's say a brand like a new brand, a D2C brand wants to get listed or get the attention of the category manager, it becomes important. So one thing that I wanted to take maybe like a step back and share about how do you actually crack this relationship with these people? And I have seen a lot of people do this one mistake or time and again, which is they start selling their product rather than understanding what the category manager wants. And the day you understand what they want or what their KPI is, I think that very day you will be able to like actually succeed. So there are just three things that a category manager in any of these large platforms looks for. One, they want to increase their category size. Let's say the beverages category is 200 crores monthly on any particular platform. Their goal will be how do I actually reach 300 crores in the next 6 months? Should I launch certain new brands? Should I launch certain different price structures, like a cheaper or a more expensive version? Should I get imported versions? Should I get healthier versions? How do I open consumer uh, gaps or white spaces where my category expands? Second, they look for category margin increase, which I feel like most of the D2C brands help them to like achieve. A large brand like a HUL or a Coke or a Pepsi or whatever, all of these brands will always give them lesser margins because of the command that they hold. But new age brands like D2C brands can definitely give them extra margin. And if they see any breakout company out of that, they know that this company is going to pull my margin up and eventually get make me money in the entire platform. And the third thing which the category manager looks for is, can you give them anything that they have a thesis on, that okay, this is something that will work out, or a category or a white space or anything where they do not have that in their assortment, but your brand can achieve, help them achieve. And that's where they can maybe like take you so that they are have a differentiated assortment, or they have a first mover advantage in all of these. That's why you'll hear like a lot of these platforms maybe telling you कि हमें exclusivity चाहिए आपके product में for the first 2-3 months, because they want to own that white space. And that's where these people come in and like try to invest themselves, but also make you invest and own that market share. So, like a couple of brands that we work with, one of the brands is called Mapro from Maharashtra. They're a very large brand. Their hero SKUs are the SKUs which are most summer led, like syrups and squashes. And when we were sitting with the Zepto team and trying to identify this problem as to when the summer goes, what does the business do? And Mapro also has like a snacking arm. And that's where, like, while discussions, we realized that they wanted within nachos, like within snacking as a category, within nachos as a subcategory, within that, they wanted a no palm oil version because they did not have a lot of options while other snacking and namkeen categories have picked up. That's where we went back to the brand, worked with them, and launched two variants of no palm oil nachos. And it's been picking up really well. The category managers are also like really excited about that. So it's very, very important to get the category managers to get excited and fill their KPI. Another brand that we work with is called Bindu Jeera. And when we were speaking with the beverage category manager at Instamart, they mentioned that they have a lot of prebiotic options, but they did not have a lot of probiotic options in no sugar, no sweetener range. And that's when we launched a sister brand called Even Eat, where now we are giving them good probiotic, no sugar sodas. And now again, the category manager is very excited. They take their own targets. They are behind you to get you to onboard on the platform and then quickly like make you get tried by the consumers. So one of the most important things I think after you've figured out your assortment or like at least basic sense of data, when you go to the category manager, never tell them that, hey, I have these 5 products, I want to sell it to you. Always ask them, tell me, this is my broad category. These are my some of the products I've already made. What is it that you want from me that I can help you achieve? And I think this just helps like the category manager and the branch a lot. Another, I think once you are listed, once you are doing well, please meet them often. I see a lot of D2C brands not going to these people's offices. Like the biggest hack to growing on QComm, at least in the initial stages, is having a very, very good relationship with these people. Keep your ego down. Uh, Give them as much as you can until you are in a position like where you own, let's say, 5 or 10 or 15% market share, where you can command back things from them, where you can cut down on spends, cut down on promos and etc. But the goal is first become important and then we become like profitable. I think once you do that, I'm sure a lot of you would also face the issue that, hey, I think in the poll also almost 30-40% people mentioned that they've not been able to, they're not listed yet. They're figuring out if this is the right model, right place or not. That's why Blinkit has kind of come with a Doraemon's Anywhere door for D2C brands, which is the seller model that they've launched, wherein you can actually take your product and launch it anywhere pan India rather than going through the normal model that was the inventory or a purchase order, PO model, whatever all of us like refer to. I think a lot of D2C brands, even after having a right product, having the right market on their maybe D2C website or Amazon, are not able to list on these QCOM platforms because they are gate kept. Maybe you're not able to find the right person. Maybe the person is not excited. Maybe the person changes, POC changes a lot of times. So you're actually not able to grow, even though the consumers are demanding products from you. Uh, that's why Blinkit launched something called seller model, wherein it's more like an Amazon model, but in a quick commerce way, wherein you go and list your products on their seller hub. You list, let's say, 3 or 4 of your products. They make you live in 10 dark stores of theirs in a particular city. You prove your metal, and then you keep unlocking more and more dark stores. The main difference between an inventory model and seller model is that in inventory model, you generally go and speak to the category manager, they approve your product, then they maybe list you in one city or multiple cities depending on the need. They ask you for a fixed margin, which is let's say a 30% margin on every sale that they do. Versus in a seller model, the price has been broken down into multiple subparts. You only pay 5 or 7% margin commission depending on the category you are in, but you pay a 50 rupees per order fee to them. You give them storage fees. So let's say if your product is not selling, you get penalized rather than Blinkit having to like penalize because of the like storage charges, and then return charges, etc. All of them are there. But the goal is that they have democratized this to a way wherein every single day anybody can go and list their products and actually move on. We work with this brand called Ubon, which is also on seller model on Blinkit, and does fantastically well in electronic space. And they also started on seller model from trial to L1 to L2. Like these are basically levels wherein you start with 10 dark stores. Once you prove your metal or once your like products are doing well, then you move to level one, which is about 50 dark stores. Then you move to level two, which is about 100 or 150 dark stores. And then comes like at the end level four, wherein it's like 450 or 500 dark stores, pan India of Blinkit. It also gives a lot of D2C brands a very good place to try out their product or try out their thesis on QComm with the right price, like right product, right price pack. Let's say you want to try out between two flavors or two different pack sizes. This becomes a very good place for you to try and then actually list. So now I think at least 1 or 2 years back, we used to like get questions from people about, hey, how do I enter QCOM? I think now that question has kind of disappeared. If you actually want to go to, let's say, an Instamart or Zepto or a Blinkit, and if they're not interested, you always have a very, very simple open door, which is the seller model. Actually prove your metal there and then move to inventory model. I think once you do this, one of the most important things, once let's say you have figured out what the assortment you have, how to keep the relationship intact, and that once you have gotten listed, one of the most important things that I again feel most of the brands get wrong is availability. They don't focus a lot on availability because they feel that is not in their hands, but it actually is. And I'll maybe let Manas speak a lot about how GobbleCube helps in availability as a lever.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Raghav. So yeah, I think as Raghav was talking about, once we've got assortment and listing out of the way, I think availability becomes the most important lever. And I call it invisible because a lot of times the assumption is here, this will be a solid lever and let me focus on perf, but it is a very critical gating criteria. And as Raghav was talking about, let's break this down into two models that we talked about. One is the traditional inventory model where you're supplying to the platform and the platform is distributing you basis whatever is the best kind of algorithmic logic on their side. And in this particular case, again, let's start with the success story. So, with one of the large healthy food brands that we were working with, we saw almost a 65% sales growth in less than a month itself. The primary assumption with which the brand was already operating with was that if they were giving good fill rates, this would automatically translate into a good shopper level availability. Now, it's important to kind of decompose this right now because as a brand when you give a good fill rate your stock arrives in the platform warehouses, but from there onwards the platform, at least in the inventory model, platform distributes that to dark stores. Now in the case of, let's say, Delhi NCR, they've got or let's take a simple example. In Mumbai, they've got two warehouses, but something like 200 odd dark stores. So now the shopper experience is a sum total of those 200 different dark stores that you have. And that was not getting done. Now, the another thing is that the dark stores have limited capacity. So you can't every time go to the platform and say, oh, I'm not stocked in this dark store, put me in there, right? They're limited capacity. So you need to also prioritize the right set of SKUs and the right set of cities or localities in which you want to push them and have a more meaningful conversation. It's always a give or take. You say, can you fix this for me? I'm okay to kind of step back on. So can you ensure best availability for SKU X and I am okay to kind of live with a lower availability of SKU Y. So you prioritize because that's where you end up having a meaningful conversation. In this particular case, the brand was able to fix their availability going from 71% to a 94%, and that is what drove that kind of sales growth for them. Uh, but now the story looks slightly different when it comes to the seller model, which Raghav was talking about, but it is equally critical. So in this particular case, we're talking about a young snack brand which had come and listed using the seller model on the platform. And the kind of impact that they saw using some of these data and insight was one, in less than a month, their sales grew by 34%, but also the storage cost, which is a very, very real cost and a drain to your bottom line while using the seller model, they were able to bring down their storage spends by almost 30%. Now, let's look at the assumption that they worked with. So, initially, like we were talking about the 10 dark store to 50 dark store to 100 dark store journey, the assumption that they went with was the fact that all the clusters have the same kind of demand density. But the insight that actually came out was that the brand was actually getting listed in some of the low category demand zones. So even though while the product offering was very, very relevant, but the locality selection was not so much. And that just made life much more difficult for them to kind of grow. So what they were able to do was actually look at the zoomed out view and say, okay, what are the relevant localities for this particular category? Get listed in those demand pockets rather than the ones which don't have high demand, and build the right depth of inventory. Because the leverage point that you have over here is that you are controlling the inventory. So you can actually create the right depth of inventory, which ensures a better continuous availability of your product. Think about it, right? If your product is listed by, let's say, 2 units in every dark store, and you've got a demand potential, latent demand of 10 units, the first two people will be able to get the product, but the next eight will be disappointed. Uh, and the next day, when it gets restocked, those eight are probably already lost. So, continuous availability is also a very, very critical variable to figure out in Q commerce. And these are some of the things that GobbleCube also allows you to do. So it helps you track your availability, but also vis-a-vis competition. Now, again, this is what we call relative availability, something which is a very important concept because QComm is nothing but a Kirana store. Right? So, because the shopper is coming with a very use case first mindset, they would prefer to buy what you have to offer. But if you're not continuously available, which we were just talking about, they will switch to a brand which they can feel they can rely more on. So that's why making sure that you're actually doing properly on a relative availability is one thing. Second is the locality layer, where you identify the key localities which have a very high potential sales impact. PSL is potential sales loss. Very high potential sales impact, but you don't have enough availability over there. And solve for them first. See, you cannot go and solve for the entire Delhi NCR or Mumbai in one go, but can you prioritize the localities which are must wins for you and do that? And of course, solving these require you to also prioritize a lot of supply chain actions on your side. What are the POs that I need to prioritize? Because again, a lot of times supply chains tend to operate on a first in, first out system. But that's probably not optimizing for the loss function that exists. So imagine this, you're sitting on servicing a PO today, due today, where most of the products are actually in stock on the platform, versus there is a PO which is 3 days or 4 days left to expiry, which has a critical SKU which is about to go out of stock. I mean, between the two, you should always prioritize the second PO. But for that, you need to have that visibility of what the potential sales loss are. So a lot of these things, in order to ensure the availability, you need to go a few steps deeper. And this is all the information that you need at your fingertips to actually solve for. Now, changing gears and moving from availability, the fact that you've ensured good hygiene around your assortment, around your listing, and your availability is where kind of the obvious one comes in, which is marketing spends. And a lot of times when we've spoken to so many different brands, this is the elephant in the room. Here, as we are getting listed on these platforms, there is a minimum commit around the marketing spends, which is absolutely fine. I think that's a reality that you live with. What is important is that you have to think of it in a way that you have committed to a marketing spend. But what you do own or control is the ROI or the marketing ROI that you can generate out of that marketing spends. So again, with one of the large personal care brands that we actually work with, they were able to achieve an 80% higher ROAS within a span of a month itself. And that was also on the same keywords and the same rank positions. So it wasn't a change in strategy, it was a change in execution, which helped them achieve these things. Imagine the leverage that you can create when you start changing the strategy also as well. But let's quickly think about what was the let's go through what the assumption was, right? In this particular case, the brand started out with the assumptions that the CPMs are stable across time and across cities. And I'll take a moment over here because this actually highlights, it truly highlights the complexity that your marketing team is dealing with today. There are so many dimensions, the dimension of time. I mean, think of it, right? A bread brand selling pizza bases as well will have very different demand patterns of the bread versus pizza bases, right? So not all time zones are the same. Similarly, not all cities behave in the same way. So assuming that these things are stable is definitely not the right way to think about it. So what you need to do is you're gone are the days when you're doing full day ads across pan India, right? You're running city level campaigns with insight first monitoring. You're also doing a lot of rank targeting with continuous bid optimizations because competition intensity keeps changing, the shopper behavior keeps changing, and consequently, a lot of the impacting variables like CPMs, conversions, and all those things keep changing. And as a brand, you need to recalibrate. But here again, I would like to invite Raghav because again, there is one thing which is about understanding what is happening and getting a product. But how do you actually go about executing is where the real alpha lies. So Raghav, over to you.
Definitely, Manas. Uh, I think my goal, I think with this at least slide of performance marketing would be to tell a lot about basics rather than going very detailed into a lot of things. But I think one thing that I've realized in the last like 6 months is a lot of brands who are spending extremely considerable amounts of money, upwards of 30, 40, 50 lakhs per month on performance marketing on QComm, still don't get these basics right. Maybe because of lack of bandwidth, lack of strategy, lack of execution. But some of these are actually very, very clear in hindsight, but yet very difficult to execute on a day-to-day level. One of the, I think, as a D2C brand or any as a brand which is just scaling up any new category or a brand, one of the most important things is that you spend almost 90 to 95% of your ad money on keywords. Uh, as Manas had mentioned in the initial times, almost 80% of the sales start from keyword search versus, let's say, browse. So it's very important that you just spend 90 to 95% there. Try to educate people off the platform. Don't treat QComm as a discovery layer in the initial scale. In the initial times when your brand is new, try to educate people off the platform, get them on QComm just as a fulfillment layer, because that's where you try to get your DRR, which is daily run rate, your sales picked up, and you don't burn a lot of money unnecessarily. And then you keep questioning if my product is right or not. But in the initial times, it's very important to do social media campaigns, to run maybe meta ads, etc. To just get people from off the platform because you can just educate and inform about your product and brand much more there. That's the number one thing. Second, I think as Manas had just mentioned, once you launch in maybe more than 2 or 3 cities, start running City X SQ campaigns. I've seen a lot of people run blanket campaigns for, let's say, all products in their category. For example, let's say if you're a protein powder brand, do not put all of your protein powders in one campaign because you are just using your impressions for the same customer who will convert once, but maybe with multiple SKUs of yours. So try to go very specific. The CPM in Delhi versus the CPM in Bangalore is very different. Uh, so that's it's very important to run CTX SQ campaigns. One, you save money. Second, you also go deeper into each city and figure out how is the performance there. As Manas had mentioned, the consumer behavior is very different in different cities, different micro pockets. So it's very, very important that we do not just treat QCOM as a blanket layer, but go rather very deep. Third thing, once you have decided that you want to run CTX SQ campaigns, how do you decide what are the keywords that you put in? How much keywords do you put in? Like I've seen brands put in 20 keywords, 30 keywords within one campaign, and then they see that their budget gets exhausted at literally 8 a.m. in the morning. That happens because you are trying to club multiple different types of keywords at one place. So there are broadly 3 types of keywords. One is branded, which is your own brand. You're trying to protect your trying to protect your own brand against your competitors bidding on that. Second is the competition ones where you are trying to gain market share of your competitors. And third is the generic one, which is let's say a rice or a haldi or a elaichi or a protein powder, which is more category searches. And within generic also, there are two types of searches. One is very core, which will have the most amount of searches. For example, in protein powder as a category will have the most amount of searches. But then there are a lot of long tail searches. For example, non-bloating protein powder, protein for women, protein for muscle recovery, plant protein. But let's say plant protein also has become very big, but like multiple sub layers within that. When you're starting a brand or just listing a product and when you have limited money, start with generic ones, long tail ones. Try to first get best ROAS in those ones because there people are very, very highly in terms of intent and then they convert better. Once you have done that, then you A B test between, let's say, competitor and core generic ones and see which is the best one that's performing for you in terms of CTR, in terms of impressions, in terms of getting new users and orders. It becomes very, very important to do like a lot of A/B tests here. So when we run campaigns for any of the brands that we work with, right now we oddly manage about 18 to 20 odd crores per year in terms of performance marketing on these channels. We create for each city X SKU, at least for the top five cities and like the top 50 to 60% products, we create city X SKU campaigns. Within that, also, we create two to three different types of campaigns, which is branded, generic, and competition. Within them, we only put like 4 to 5 keywords at a particular point of time and then try a lot, do a lot of A/B testing. As Manas was mentioning, day parting, like a bread which works in the morning will not work in the evening. So all of those things just keep changing. So once you do those A/B tests, like you figure out what's working for you, and then, like, of course, there are some hacks that you can do. For example, Blinkit or a lot of these places now start showing up results when you even just have typed, let's say, two, three alphabets of a keyword. If you type PROT, it will show you searches for protein powder. So maybe you can try bidding for keywords which are not full, but like, let's say, half keywords, deliberate misspellings, that's in protein, PROTEIN ke jagah IEN. So all of these things, which are like kind of hacks, which work at initial scale might not work at a large scale when your budgets are very, very high, but it becomes very important. For example, with one of the brands that we were working with called JK Spices, we had launched them in Bangalore. And of course, elaichi as a keyword is very, very competitive. And large players were sitting there in terms of organic listing. What we were able to do with targeted ads, a lot of A/B testing was after 3 months' time, they were able to rank on top organically on a keyword like Elaichi and then stopped spending money on ads and giving more maybe deals so that they got better conversions. So it's very important that you, once you start running ads for like a 2 to 3 odd months, your goal should be, of course, better ROAS, more consumers. But as you mature as a brand and as a product, the goal is how do I get organic share of voice? How do I get listed organically on top? How do my rankings improve as my brand keeps getting better? Because that's where you'll be able to become, let's say, CM2 positive, become better, like profitable in terms of in a brand point of view. So it's very, very important to do that. So that's it from I think our side. Manas, if you want to take over.
Thanks a lot, Raghav. So, I think just moving forward, and I think we're pretty much through most of the things that we wanted to talk about. Uh, I think the last point that I would like to talk about is the fact that while we've talked in this particular session, we've covered a lot of things that a young emerging brand needs to focus on, which is something like your assortment, your listing, your availability, your performance automation, and more importantly, even like real time alerts, because uh, I know you guys are operating with very, very small, lean teams. Right? And in that particular case, it is very difficult to kind of sit on dashboards, spend a lot of time on dashboards to figure things out because you'd rather spend, like Raghu was talking about, you'd rather spend meeting a category manager and grooming that relationship uh, versus doing all those things. But this is not where it ends. I mean, we would love to work with you to make this successful. And eventually, as you start scaling up, you're not just optimizing for top line, you're now going deeper. Problems like how much am I spending and am I spending on the right SKUs, which give me the right ROI on my promo spends? How can I start shaping some of my demand? Like we talked about, it is not just about performance automation, but performance strategy. How do I create a better media allocation? And also, how do I not just get the right assortment listed on day one, but also keep a very strong tab on what are the micro trends and categories that are growing so that I'm capturing on them. These are, as you start scaling up, these are things which become relevant, right? And Gobble Cube is becoming the de facto operating layer for this. But one thing that I would want to take this opportunity to kind of talk about, and this is something which we are doing, especially for all the people who are on this call, is that we are launching a Gobble Cube incubator program because we recognize that as you scale up, there is a catch 22 situation, right? When you're small, you generally like are scaling up and you're very, very prudent with your spends. You don't want to end up spending too much on products which help you scale on QCOM. But also there's a catch to that, that if you don't have these right set of insights, it doesn't actually help you scale. So we wanted to kind of break that catch 22 and also make sure that we are becoming an integral part of how this ecosystem is evolving. And that's why we're launching this Global Cube incubator program, which is built specifically for the segment of brands doing under 20 lakhs of revenue. So just about getting listed or just starting to scale up. They will get Gobble Cube access, which is completely free, and there are no caveats or catches over here. There's no trial window or anything like that. You will actually get some of these data points that we're talking about so that actually you can build and scale. This is our contribution to how we get early stage brands to scale up on QCOM and give back to the community. Again, we like you can scan the QR code over here to get more details about this Launchpad program. But yeah, I mean, for us, happy to answer any questions that you have. Uh, I would also request Raghav to speak a little bit about YGL before we kind of open the floor to questions.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Manas. So at Growth Labs, I think as Manas was saying, uh, tools like GobbleCube become the data layer where they help you make decisions from a macro and micro perspective in terms of where you go. But at Growth Labs, we help brands scale up on quick commerce while becoming their QCOM team. Uh, a lot of times it feels overwhelming to connect all of these dots in terms of availability, performance, assortment, discounting, how to actually grow and make your PNL profitable. And that's where we come in. We work with brands like JK Masale, Mapro, Bindu Jira, Gladful, and much more, and manage about 150 odd crores of quick commerce revenue for all of them. We become your business team and let you make fantastic, great products. So, in case anybody of you are looking to scale up on quick commerce rigorously, like you can scan or take my email ID and shoot up a mail, would be happy to chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Raghav. Thank you everyone for joining. But again, this is not the end of it. Let's get into the questions now.
Yeah.
I'll just start. There are some of the questions in the Q&A section only, so I'll just start with that. Razia Ali is asking, the fundamental question is for new brands, there is no category POC. It feels like an IVR supported business engagement. How do we solve it?
I think maybe I'll just talk about the seller model only here, Razia. I think it becomes like this is a problem that a lot of D2C brands are facing that they're not able to list on QCOM. One of the best ways, if your product lies anywhere above 150 or 200 rupees per product, that you go to seller model, prove your metal there, at least do, let's say, a 10 lakh or 20 lakh odd per month there, and then go to, let's say, Swiggy, Zepto, or Blinkit's category team and show them your numbers, and then they get interested because there's just thousands and thousands of D2C brands that launch every year. And it becomes even difficult for these brands or these platforms actually to list all of them. So it is difficult. I hear you and I understand you. But one of the easiest ways is Blinkit seller model.
Razia, I think she has a follow-up question. So we wait for L4 clearance to get some attention.
No, so in terms of seller model, L4 is basically the level 4 where you kind of get access to all the dark stores. Even in those cases, a platform like Blinkit might not list you in the normal purchase order or PO model. The reason why they don't do it is, think from a category point of view. The category guy or the like woman, like category person is making their category, their assortment that, hey, I want five brands in this segment. I need three brands in this price point, this flavor, this whatever, all of that. Once that entire basket is full, they don't want more and more brands eating for the same pie. So that's why they don't want to take that engagement with you when they do not have a very clear why for you existing in the category. So even though, let's say, for example, Haldiram Bhujia exists, you might launch a equivalent brand like Haldiram and might do really well on seller model. Even then, maybe the category person might not take you because they might not feel the need for you. In those cases, still keep going in level like in Blinkit seller model, but maybe go to Swiggy and Zepto and show your number and then let them do. I think one hack for you to see, like one hack for you to get the interest of the category person is your search volume per month on these platforms. If people are searching for your brand, for your product, and you are not showing up, the QCOM teams, they have a lot of people sitting just doing this. There's something called null searches. So if your brand is not there, but your brand searches are there, they will call you, they will get you listed because they know that consumers want you, but you are not yet listed. So my like suggestion would be try to build a lot of demand outside the platform. Let people go to QCOM, search for a product, and then it will come back. Like the platforms will come back to you.
Abhishek Kumar is asking, hi, interesting set of insights on the slide, Mapro catering to the no palm oil demand one. Is there a reason why the different platforms have such varying demands?
So I'll maybe take this one. So there's not a reason as such, but again, it's more like trends. As we as D2C brand owners or the brand owners keep seeing what's working and what consumers want, even these platforms keep getting a lot of searches or interest from a lot of consumers in terms of what they want. And that shows up in their keyword search, very simply put. So honestly, I think it's not varying demand, but the POV of the category person who's trying to build. For example, a Blinkit might be wanting to build for a different kind of consumer versus a Zepto, versus a First Club, versus a Flipkart Minutes. So that's why you will see people focusing on different segments and different categories. But at the end, uh, like if you as a brand are targeting some of the consumer cohorts or the consumer persona, these platforms are also targeting the same. So there will be a place where both of the platform and the brand uh, find that good collaboration and like grow together.
Thanks, Raghav. Namrata Kumari is asking, how do we get data for relevant demand zones for our category?
So, Namrata, I think this is something which is a algorithm that we've built out, which again, what it tries to do is it looks at the overall hyperlocal demand patterns across the board, and not just for your brand specifically, because whenever you look at a specific brand, there's a survivorship bias over there. So अगर आप वहाँ पे हो नहीं, तो आपको ऐसा you will feel like it is not important, which is not really the case. So what our algorithms do is try to look at it at a category level and see what is the relevance of the category. The most important thing is if there are demand pockets where the category is extremely relevant, and we call it internally, this is a metric which we call locality score. So if a locality has a very high locality score for a particular category, but you have low availability, that becomes your immediate prioritized action item. And this is done across categories, across cities. So it gives you a very clear view of whatever you're trying to look at.
Ruchika is asking, how do we plan inventory from Blinkit seller models so to avoid excessive storage fees as Blinkit's recommendation don't work very well?
Uh, See, I think one of the things that and see, I come from I spent 7 years as part of Blinkit, so I come from that perspective. Today, there are almost like 12 to 15,000 brands listed on Blinkit. If you look at the complexity that a category manager sitting inside any of these platforms is dealing with, is absolutely insane. And for them, they look at it category first, right? You will look at it brand first. So it's always the brand that we fundamentally believe need to solve the problem. And that's where I think, as a combination of creating, making those data and insights readily available to you, and even giving you the kind of capability to have those conversations, which Raghav and the YGL team is promoting. It is about creating those meaningful conversations. It's not about, like, this is the advantage of the seller model, that you're not forced to do that. You can make your own calculations and do that, and you will always have a better perspective of what the demand shape looks like. And I think that's how we've always recommended brands to operate.
Preeti Khanna is asking, can we get locality-wise shopper profile to identify relevance to the brand TG?
So, Preeti, we see a user profile is apart from the platforms themselves who are sitting on that kind of data, you can never do a user profiling. But like we were talking about, if you look at different micro categories, I mean, the moment you break it into micro categories, you can start looking at affluence levels, right? There will be certain micro. If we take the same category and break it down into, let's say, the price architecture, you can start looking at super premium, premium, mass, and mass premium products, right? And basis the relative consumption of some of those things, you can start creating some level of broader profiles of the locality level rather than the user level. And which I think is actually the right way to go about it, because none of these platforms will actually let you into that user information. So what you're targeting is actually localities, not users in the first place anyways.
We have another question from Abhishek Kumar. Hi, another interesting set of insights here. How to run ads slide. Which platforms does GobbleCube feel are most optimized for reach and reach and B CAC?
Uh, Abhishek, I think it's just a continuously evolving. I would never pick one platform over the other. As I think Raghav was mentioning earlier, every platform comes with its own set of strong suits, right? I think as a brand, the real answer over here is to, rather than creating a predetermined selection, experiment, because that's what this is all about. I mean, if one category works well on one particular platform, doesn't mean, if category X is working well on platform A, doesn't mean category Y will also work well on platform A. Right? So for us as a brand, my advice to you would be, try to list on as many platforms as possible, experiment as much as possible. You never know. I mean, one category for your brand might work really well on platform X, while another category on platform Y. But it is, the most important thing is to actually analyze what is happening and recalibrate your actions basis that.
Ruchika Shehrawat is asking, how does GC help plan inventory as they show inventory at city level? However, we need to plan ROs at warehouse level. I think in page.
So we actually show you inventory at warehouse level and not city level. Because at the end of the day, a warehouse is the unit at which you will operate, not the city. So if I just, like, for a second go back over here, if you look at the PO slide, if you look at all these POs that are being prioritized is at a warehouse level. So we will show you the shopper level availability at a city and a locality level, but the moment it comes to supply chain, it is done at a warehouse level.
Krishna is asking, what is your quick go-to tip for a hair care brand?
I think people are becoming very, very discerning when it comes to hair care. So getting the right micro category, it's not about, like, trust me, uh, if we rewind back 15 years, serums in hair care was an unheard concept. If you then move forward, it was, serums meant shine serums. Today, serums are not really shine serums. The growth in the serums category is coming because of growth serums. And active people, shoppers are becoming really discerning, where now they're purchasing on the basis of active ingredients, specific benefits, and not just, I need to put a serum. Uh, and the reason I'm talking about all these is to show how nuanced the shoppers are becoming, which is a mammoth opportunity for the brands to actually crack these things. I think Minimalist, Wish Care, I mean, these are such phenomenal success stories. Plum, right? All of them are such phenomenal success stories when it comes to that. Moxie Beauty as well, sorry.
Mhm. We have another question from Gaurav asking, are Zepto and Instamart also planning to open up a seller model?
I don't think we have the right intel to actually answer that question. Uh, but I don't see a reason why not, is my short take. Raghav, I don't know if you have a point of view there.
No, I think if I'm not wrong, for example, Instamart has launched something for brands where it's similar to seller model, but not as open. You still have to go through a team to get your product listed, but they list you in certain dark stores with certain products by taking certain kind of money. That is there, but I don't think both of them have at least launched. As Manas mentioned, like you can never say never to anything. They might not.
Abhinav Kumar's question is, if my beverage product is rupees 125, can I get a bundle? Can I bundle it as a pack of two? If I want to sell it on Blinkit seller to be optimized for 50 rupees order, this is a very detailed question. Do I need to physically pack it as two, or can I just sell it as two individual beverages? That are not packed together.
I think it's best if we answer this offline. Maybe you can email us and maybe we'll reply so that the larger audience we can like move to the other question. I hope that's okay.
Yeah. Anshita is asking, give me a sec. Yeah. Would running city-wise SKU campaigns result in improving SOV and MS in the long run? If yes, by what time period we can expect the improvement in MS?
So I'll take a first stab at that. See, I think, Anshita, the most important thing over here is that every city behaves in a very different way. A Bangalore will behave very, very differently from a Mumbai, and definitely very, very differently from a Bhopal. And when I say different, it is across multiple vectors. The CPMs to achieve rank one will be very different. The shopper preferences will be very, very different. And you, as a brand, might be a leader in one of those cities and a challenger, which means your fundamental marketing strategy. I mean, when you're a leader, you're not really vying for top slot because you have that organically. But if you're a challenger, you are vying for that slot. And that is why it is not just SOV and specifically, but overall ROAS and overall DRRs, which really improve phenomenally if you become sharper about it.
Animage is asking, a lot of brands today, especially the D2C ones, suffer from a lack of knowledge of the benchmarks, especially the ideal/good to have ranges for many of the platform parameters across the categories they operate in. These could be discount guardrails, ad spend percentage contributions, retailer terms to ideally work with, etc., which really key gaps in deciding the long-term growth plan. Can Gobble Cube solve for this potentially in some form?
It's an interesting thing. I think that's a very interesting thought. And this is something which we are working towards. Uh, the short answer right now is we are working towards that to ideally create some of these benchmarks. We're not really there yet, but we'll get there soon enough and we'll be launching some of these things.
Vijay is asking, I'll just keep 10 more questions, 5 to 6 more questions, and then we'll end the webinar. Vijay is asking, instead of going on the long tail keyword, how about if we go with smart bidding? How would that work?
I think so, Vijay. I think all of like smart bidding, broad match, all of these things do really work in the initial times when you have never ever launched a campaign. You can get a sense of which keywords are performing well for you, which keywords are not performing well for you, and let the platform do the hard work. But beyond the time when your uh, budget starts getting bigger and when you want to optimize for every single rupee spent, that's when you try and kind of go with exact match or very, very specific types of keywords that you want to run ads on and use the money efficiently.
Vedant is asking, our brand offers a premium range, but competitors sell smaller packs. For example, we offer a 300 ml pain relief spray, while others offer a 100 ml. Give me a sec. Offer a 100 ml or smaller. How do we strategize to position our product effectively in this scenario? What should the strategy be?
We don't see the first and foremost thing is to see where the demand is actually happening. And it is not just the size of that particular pack size, because there's a pack size element to that, there's a price point element to that, there's a benefits element to that. So it's not just about which quadrant or which cell are you sitting in, what is the growth rate of that cell also, which is the first fundamental question that you need to ask, that am I sitting in the right quadrant or do I need to move? The second is, if you are in the right quadrant, then it becomes a question of what are the things that are working both from a promo point of view, what is the competition that you're taking on, and I think that's how you need to approach. So it's a multi-layered approach, and it's not like a single answer, but I think that's where the conversation starts with.
This will be the last question for today. Ruchika has asked, how do you plan inventory for Blinkit seller models so as to avoid excessive storage fees, as the recommendations don't work very well? I believe we covered this one.
I think we covered this,
Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
I'll pick up another one. How can we grow our listings rank organically on Blinkit and Instamart?
Maybe I'll just take that up.
Yeah.
So there's this concept called revenue per impression per keyword that most of course, like not nobody, none of us know here except maybe Manas how I think the algorithm for these platforms are. But as per my understanding and what we have seen from a brand's perspective is that there's a something called revenue per impression per keyword. As a platform, what they ideally want is that when a consumer comes and when they search for a keyword or a category, overall wise in terms of conversion, which is the best product that people are buying more and more. So the example that I had taken about Elaichi, what we did for 3 months is we strategically placed our bids in a way that we were visible to a lot of people. We strategically put our promotions in a way during weekdays, during weekends, during buying periods and non-buying periods in a way that the goal was how do I convert all of the consumers or most of the consumers to my pack or to my product so that my revenue per impression for a Blinkit in Bangalore increases and becomes the most. The moment that happens, Blinkit knows or Swiggy knows or Zepto knows that, hey, whenever a search is coming, people want a product like this because they convert the most here. And that's how I keep the consumer to myself as a platform. And that's how you start kind of organically ranking higher on keywords. I think GobbleCube also does help in tracking your organic ranking month on month. So maybe Manas can quickly talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Raghav. I think two things which are very, very important. So one, purely from the platform algorithm point of view, see, again, they keep these are mostly machine learning algorithms. So there's no deterministic answer to that. It continuously self-optimizes. At least that's how most of these algorithms are built up. But like Raghav was pointing out, there is revenue per impression. There is also conversion, which is a very, very important objective function of those machine learning algorithms. So a lot of times, if you're just running campaigns on massive reach keywords, but not really getting a good conversion, it might actually turn out to be detrimental for you and hurt your organic rank rather than improving it. The other point to actually note there as well is the fact that there is, at least in some of the platforms, there's only one of those listings. So if you're running an ad, your organic listing actually disappears. So again, this is something which we have built out as a capability, which asynchronously keeps looking at how your organic ranking is improving whenever the ad is not running. For you to be aware of the fact that till what point of time do I actually support running the ads, and when can I move the budget because the SQ has become self-reliant, and move it to a new SKU. So I think these are again multiple things which we have built out, which help you kind of analyze these things. Selection of the keywords is extremely important, like we talked about. And while we might not be able to know exactly what algorithms are there, but we can look at the outcomes to see how we can continuously improve.
Okay. Before we wrap up, Raghav, Manas, would you like to share some last thoughts?
Raghav, you want to go first?
I think not a lot, but honestly, I'm glad that all of you came, and I hope that this was helpful. QComm, I think as an industry, it's unprecedented. When I started my first startup, it was an e-commerce company per se, and I've seen the difference from that time to today. Like in the just last 5 years, how consumers have started buying very differently. And I'm very glad that this is also opening up a lot more opportunities for D2C new age brands to go pan India and really win the market wherever they are versus just in the city or let's say building out offline systems with, I think, the help of Meta, Instagram, social media, and QComm. I think this has become a very good bridge or a very good layer to get consumers from in India and to serve consumers pan India. So that's it. All the best to all of you and all of us who are operating in QComm. I think last 5 years, as Manav mentioned, were transformational, and next 5 years are going to be more transformational. So super excited to be in this space.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll just keep it very short because I think one thing which is very important is it is changing consumer behavior. The gone are the days when everybody used to watch the same content. Instagram has changed that completely, or TikTok as well when it was there. And similarly, when it comes to commerce, people are becoming way more discerning. As a human being, we are evolving, becoming way more discerning, and that is an opportunity to innovate. So, for us, the way we think about it at GobbleCube is there is a tremendous amount of innovation that is happening, and it is just phenomenal to sit at the epicenter of that innovation. What is important as a brand is when it comes to innovation, it can seem daunting, but it also an opportunity at the same time. The number that we saw, the amount of brands that are coming in and hitting that 100 CR mark within a span of a year or 2 years, right? It is just absolutely phenomenal. The question is, how do you get the right set of product capabilities to get you over there? I think that becomes very important. And also the fact that how do we contribute to this ecosystem, because that journey from 7 billion to 30-35 billion dollar is going to be exciting like anything, but we want to be an integral part of that. We want to live that journey alongside you. So I think that's why we are doing everything that we are doing. So excited about this.
That's it from us today. We'll be sending the recording straight to your inbox shortly. Thank you, Manas and Raghav, and thank you everybody for showing up. Take care.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.